Yeah, hey everyone, welcome to the Pectra live stream by Nethermind. We have here already some of our esteemed guests, Marius from the Go Ethereum team, Perry from the ETH Panda Ops team. We have Camille from Nethermind and also a lot of other Nethermind faces. Uh, Starting, uh, we would like to go over that what's the picture upgrade and what is the most significant uh, EIPs and changes that are included in the picture upgrade as you see them. Um, I'd like to ask this to Marius.
Sure. So I don't know, when we kind of scoped the Pectra upgrade, we first thought that we would add PDAS and EOF into it, and we had this like really big upgrade planned, and then we kind of realized that we had to split it because it was just too big and would have taken too long to ship. And then we split it, but then we kept adding more EIPs. So Pectra is actually one of the largest upgrades that we've did. I think we have 11 EIPs or something. So it's
I think it is
like a
even
long.
the largest, right? In terms of
I
number
don't know.
of EIPs.
I don't know if it's the largest, but it's definitely very big. Yeah, the big thing that I hope for, well, the kind of headliners are the MaxiB and the 7702. Both of them are pretty cool. The one thing that I would like to highlight, because probably no one else is going to, is actually the EL requests. I don't have the number on top of my head, but basically this introduces a new mechanism. Give me a second.
You mean the EIP 76?
7002.
No, I think it's general purpose execution layer request. That's
yeah.
7685,
Yes.
right?
Yeah.
7685, exactly.
Okay.
I also got the list now. 7685 and 76885 basically gives us the option of transferring data from signaling stuff from the execution layer to the consensus layer. Previously, it was only like we had this really one-way direction from the consensus layer to the execution layer, and now with this mechanism, we can signal stuff from the execution layer to the consensus layer, and I think that's a pretty powerful paradigm. And we're already using it for the consolidations, the withdrawals, and the deposits. So execution layer triggered deposits, execution layer triggered consolidations and withdrawals. And I think that is a pretty cool feature that is coming in Pectra. And we can use this mechanism if we ever need it in the future as well, which is kind of nice.
Very cool. Perry, what would you say that the theme of Pictra is? Like, is there a specific theme for the Pictra upgrade that it's kind of focusing on? Or is it more of a bunch of different things, different flavors?
I think it's a lot of different flavors, and maybe depending on who is looking at the upgrade, there's a different headliner for you. So if you're a regular user, imagine like my dad is using Ethereum. I don't think he would care much about MaxiP. It doesn't meaningfully change anything for him, but he would really love 7702 because he's already using a smart wallet, and this would make his workflow a lot simpler. But if you're a staker, and if you're a home staker, MaxiB is still probably not going to change massively for you, but the attestation change might actually impact you positively. If you're a large staking provider, then MaxiB would be a really cool thing for you. If you're a core dev, execution requests are probably a cool thing for you. So I feel like there's something for a lot of different people. It just depends on what view you have of Ethereum and what your use case is.
hmm hmm I mean, also for dApps, there is the BLS precompile and
Hmm.
historical block hashes in the state. So
Exactly.
these improvements for dApp developers as well. So like, yeah, I agree. There is like multiple themes here, like
Yeah, and I think
that.
the security team is probably happier about having system contracts instead of having to review 5 different precompiles of something, right? So it feels like we have quite a lot of smaller EIPs that a lot of in different groups would be relatively happy with, but we don't have one headliner EIP that one group is really happy with. So we kind of like
Mm,
improve everyone's acceptance of Ethereum by like a marginal percentage instead of in the past we've always improved one group significantly.
right.
Like a
Yeah.
general UX improvements for all, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, okay. So what happened with Holinsky, guys? Like that stirred a lot of drama on Twitter and
It
on
was a
a
fun
lot of
plan.
Yeah.
if you look at it from different perspectives.
It was like a
Well,
real war room, right?
Yeah, I loved it. It was
yeah.
exactly in between my vacation days, so great timing.
So yeah,
No,
like
but
let's start looking at the Holinsky incident. How
yeah.
did the Holinsky like fork initiated? Did it go well initially, and how did it go to where it went later on?
Mhm.
Camille,
Yeah.
you want to tell us?
I guess I
Yeah.
can kick off that, right? So transition itself worked well, right? Because everything was well configured for Pectra on Holinsky, and we were like at the very first blocks, we were happy that everything works fine. But then first deposit landed, right? And the one line which wasn't properly set for a few of the EL clients caused that fork happened, right? And it was about deposit contract, which has different address comparing to mainnet, and everyone had a fallback for mainnet address, while on Holinsky it is slightly different. But thankfully, two of the clients, minority clients, had it set correctly. So it wasn't like a total disaster where we switched to different fork and wasn't able to recover at all. We had this fallback where two of the clients, Ref and Arigon, as I recall, right, they set it properly on their side, so they kind of preserved the proper fork, while others, it took a little bit of time, first of all, to notice what exactly was misconfigured, right? Later on, you need to roll out the fixes, etc. But yeah, we had at least this fallback for Holinsky, and it caused quite a big of the dramatic failure. Well, where like I don't know how much we fall, but it was around 5% of validators who were on proper fork, while 95% was on a different fork. So like very, very tough, very, very harmful non-finality period on Holinsky.
Mm. And like so like what I'm hearing is this was like a purely configuration issue, and there was nothing in the code that was wrong. Am I correct in my assumption?
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's
I would say
what it
so.
was. It was like a simple one-liner, but on the other hand, yeah, as it sounds simple, it is not that simple to catch across all of those
Mm,
hundreds, tens of thousands of lines which were changed for this. It
right.
was easily
Missed.
something easy to miss, right? Yeah.
Right.
And I
Right.
think different
Makes sense.
teams also had some sort of check for different values. We just didn't have like a comprehensive list that we should check. All of these are configured right. A lot of assumptions were also that testnets kind of have all the contracts and everything in the same location as mainnet. There were some reasons why we didn't have this in the past, either we're using custom contracts or we've done like a manual deployment or whatever. So the contracts tended to be in different locations. This is again something that we fixed in Hoodie, for example. All the contracts are the same location as mainnet. But that being said, if we didn't hit this problem in Holsky, we probably would have in Gnosis chain, we probably would have somewhere else because in the end, the config value has to be right. And there's nothing that you could really check besides manual review if the configuration is correct.
Mm, great. All right. So that gives us some context. Now, I just want to like highlight something. So Holinsky is like a large validator set testnet. So it is intended to be this simulating a testnet where there is a large number of validators, and most of these validators are operated by entities that are pre-assigned these validators to them, right? So these validators are pre-assigned to these entities. So this is mostly to like test these large validator environments with
Exactly.
pre-assigned entities. Now, this makes it possible to do some coordination between those validator operators, right? Because that makes it a bit more easier. So what happened after the fork? Did the Holinsky like survive? Did the operators actually like go and upgrade their clients to a fixed version? And what happened?
So I can give you some more context. So Holsky is a public validator set, so almost anyone can make a deposit if you have funds. I think we knew roughly 85% of everyone who is running a validator. The other 15% is just, I don't know, you got some money from a faucet, or you got some testnet ether from a faucet, you make a deposit. There's no way we know who this is and what entity they belong to. So kind of the upper limit of what we can coordinate on Holsky was roughly 85-ish%. However, so what went wrong here was with the config bug, we justified an invalid chain, a technically invalid chain, right? So because the majority had agreed on the bug. It would have been better if the 3 clients had different bugs, but unfortunately, they did have different bugs, but the result that they agreed on was also buggy. So now you have this scenario where if I have a CL and I start it up, there are 2 chains. So one is justified and buggy, and the second one is non-justified but not buggy. And on the CL, there's no way for you to force to go to this chain. So all the ELs have a patch, they have a fix. They will continue trying to build on this justified but buggy chain because it just has a higher weight. So the CLs were missing this mechanism to say, I want you to go to this chain instead of this chain. This is part of a stream of non-finality testing we did in November. So we had found like some peer-to-peer issues. We had found that we would need some way of choosing which chain to go to. We would need to fix a lot of memory leaks and stuff like memory growth issues that would happen during non-finality period. However, everyone was focused on Pectra. So going down to this level of fixes was just something that wasn't high priority. And unfortunately, we hit those same problems with Pectra. So post Hosky, what client teams did was they spent days, weeks, nights, whatever, doing temporary fixes to solve these problems. So that once you restart a node, you would be able to sync to the right chain. And once you have more and more weight syncing to the right chain, you would eventually be able to justify and finalize it. In order to aid them, we also spun up like a lot of servers that people could point validators to. We had servers that we had guides that people could use to make sure that their node's on the right head and stuff like that. Since then, though, now that the initial chaos is done, we realized that these are a class of problems we have to take very seriously, at least for the next fork. It's not something we can let just happen. So we have around 13 different changes we would like to have in the CL that would help us in the future, if such a thing were to happen, to recover more gracefully. Most of them are relatively well scoped, and they were based off of the retrospective that every CL has put out. So this is kind of already pre-agreed information. And almost none of these would need to be an EIP. An example would be adding an RPC endpoint in the execution layer that prints out the config. Right? This is quite straightforward. If you have a standardized config hash, you could compare it across ELs and make sure that everyone's configured easily. The CL ones are a bit more difficult, but we still have like a list. And now the problem is basically project managing this list and shipping it so that we can ensure Holsky type scenarios will never happen in the future or mitigate them as much as possible.
So did CL clients implement this mechanism to actually force joining or force switching to a different fork now after that
So
incident?
a lot of them did it in their beta versions. I think clients did not want to ship this without having like a comprehensive discussion. But yes, in a lot of clients, you could say, I want you to sync to this branch instead of the other branch. And then the user would have to set this, of course, or a client would have to make a release with this branch hard-coded. And once you have that, you would override the node's weighting system.
All right, awesome. Thank you. And what so what comes next for Holisky? Like, is Holisky being sunsetted? Is there like a new testnet that is coming up that will replace Holisky? That's the last question about Holisky, I promise.
Yes, so Holsky is still valuable because we have a lot of infra on it, and we've set up a new network called Hoodie. Hoodie is Genesis with all the same parameters as mainnet. It also went through Pectra. It went through Pectra successfully. And this is one of our realizations is that with Holsky, once you have these slashings that happen once everyone switched to the right chain and you have a lot of inactivity leak, the exit queue is really long. It would take roughly a year for the exit queue to really clear up. So Holsky is mostly unusable. You can still use it for a lot of things, but not for the comprehensive Ethereum tests that we want to do. So that's why we started with Hoodie as a new network. But we want to give people enough time to migrate. So Holsky will still be, it's marked as deprecated, but it will still be maintained till about September this year. And the aim is that by then all the infrastructure has moved on and we can maintain Hoodie for the next, I think, 3 years is the timeline. But we also have like a timeline for how long networks are supposed to be up, what their end of life date is, and so on. And the main reason we want to restart networks, because that's also not necessarily a popular view. People want to have one network that's just up forever. It's that the protocol itself changes quite a bit. And we might just need a different type of network to help test the protocol at its need at that time. And there's no way of knowing what Ethereum needs 5 years from now or 3 years from now, to be honest. So we'd prefer like restarting these networks and then clearing out the state and having something new every so often.
Yeah, makes sense. Thank you. So the one other testnet that also didn't go so well when we started the fork was Sepolia. Marius, would you like to give us a rundown on what happened there?
Sure, I can do that. Yeah, so 2 weeks I think after Holesky, we forked Sepolia and we're all very happy. And then very quickly we realized that the blocks that were produced on Sepolia were empty. Like they were still being produced, but the blocks were just empty without any transactions in it. And so we were like, okay, like what is going on? What is happening? And when we looked into the logs, we kind of realized that the deposit contract between Sepolia and mainnet was different. So the Sepolia deposit contract is an ERC20 gated contract. So basically, it itself is an ERC20 token. And the way the logic works for these deposits is after you executed the block, you will read through all of the logs that are happening, and you will search for logs that are coming from a certain address, and you're trying to read those. And the problem was that well, this contract created the normal deposit logs, but also every time someone deposited an event for the ERC20. And so the logic for looking through the logs would choke on these ERC20 logs. And yeah, so that was pretty bad, because when you create the block in the miner, you would also need to do this. You would also need to go through the logs. And what would happen is that your block creation would fail. And because you can always create an empty block beforehand, or you always create an empty block beforehand, you would just send out the empty block to the network. And so we still had blocks. The network was still functioning fine, but the blocks were empty without these deposit transactions. And so yeah, that is, it's not an extremely bad state, but it's not a great state either, because no one is getting their transactions in. Yeah, so what we did was, first of all, we kind of looked for the deposit transactions, and because it's an ERC20 gated contract, we knew like all of the people that deposited were like known for us. So it was, I think, Perry and the DevOps team deposited, and
but then someone figured out they can transfer zero balance, right?
Yeah, that's coming later. But like we first of all, we had like 2 deposits, and we removed them by just sending a transaction with the same nonce, so they got revoked. And then the blocks were being produced fine, and everything was kind of okay. And we were like internally looking at how to fix the actual issue, because the problem is like we had to roll out the fix on all or most of the nodes at the same time, because otherwise someone would mine a transaction and would create an invalid block, and the chain would split. And yeah, and then at some point, like the blocks became empty again, and we were like, okay, what is going on? And someone figured out that if you have an ERC20 token contract, you can always send a zero transfer. So if you're transferring 0 tokens from A to B, you can do that even if you don't have any tokens, because you're transferring 0.
And that will implement an event.
Yeah, this will create an event again, and then this will break our logic again. And so yeah, so what we did was we rolled out a version on some nodes that we didn't tell the public about, that had a different logic that would just ignore this specific transaction, this specific event. And so some nodes would create blocks with transactions again, because like there's significant load on the Sepolia network, right? People are using it to test. There's like testing going on all the time. There's even some like actual use cases going on Sepolia, so people were kind of complaining. And yeah, then at some point we decided, okay, like we're going to ship the fix at, I think, 3 p.m. or something, and everyone came together and updated their nodes, and everything was fine afterwards. But yeah, that was quite interesting that someone saw us struggling on the network, figured out that they could just send the zero transfer and create this event and make our lives harder. But yeah, in the end, we figured it out. And again, it was...
And the nice thing is the network didn't really go down. It was still a live chain. Arbitrum, for example, was using Sepolia as their testnet to target blobs, and they didn't have any downtime either. So it's a good sign of how the difference between liveness and finality is on Ethereum.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, yeah, thank you for the rundown. Um, like one last question. So what will happen to those people who are running validator software right now that is outdated and is not ready for the upcoming fork? This is the last question in this segment. We will then move on to the next one, but it's important that we know like that they know that what's going to happen and that we give them a final warning to upgrade before it's too late.
Yeah, they will just fuck off. They will lose money because they're not testing on the right chain, and if they're producing a block, it will be on the wrong chain. It will get rejected by the network. So yeah, make sure to update as soon as possible. You should have done it by now, but there's still time. So
And
the
even if you
versions,
forget to and the fork has happened, please still update. You will not be
yes,
penalized for updating after the
It's
fork,
still
but
more
you
than an
should.
hour, yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, like as long as the like not updated clients are not the majority, that fork will not finalize, and thus it will not be penalized heavily, right? Um, and as long as you upgrade later, you will be able to join back the correct majority fork. Is that correct, Barry?
Exactly. And kind of the analog of this in sort of voting is that right now the core devs have made a proposal. This is what we think Ethereum's next fork should be. And we're waiting to see that enough validators have accepted that proposal. And you accept that proposal by updating your software. That means you accept that this is the next fork. And once over 66.6% accept this is the next fork, that means Ethereum will execute it and will finalize it, and this will be the new Ethereum.
Oh, that's pretty interesting. Okay.
Yeah,
Well,
I mean,
thank
there's
you.
no guarantee. Validators could reject any upgrade we make.
That's true. That's actually true. Well, uh, yeah, I think I still have some time for one final question. Um, do you think that the community right now and the validator operators, solo stakers, home stakers, is there enough validators that are ready for the upgrades? What are the numbers looking like?
There are
I'm
this is like in the decentralized world in Ethereum, it's really hard to follow that, right? You cannot like guarantee that we have more than 66%, but you can track it, do some crawling through network, etc. And we have few sources already, which tells one source tells it's 82%, other source tells it is 98%, other source tells it is 90 something, right? So we can be quite confident that it is good, right? But as you cannot like be super sure, we will see in 1.5 hours how many of them were ready, because we will see that on the at the state on votes for new epochs, how many of them were
Right.
voting to the new chain, right? So hopefully we are very good, very ready on we coordinated it across the client teams, etc., to be sure that everyone who is running on client team side, their validators, they are prepared. We were sending bunch of reminders on Twitter, on Discord channels, etc., to make sure that everyone got reached out, right? But yeah, few percent might not be ready, but few percent of loss is like the only harmful impact will be for them who forgot to upgrade. We are hoping not to drop below 66%, which will be not still a disaster, but we'll need to quickly figure out what is going on. But yeah, chances are pretty small, right?
Yep.
Yep.
Well,
And
thank you
we
very much.
also have the Zatu data set that home stakers can run a piece of software. It's called Contributor. You can send us some timing information on when you see things on the network. And based on that data set, I think we have under 3% that have not updated. But we will know soon how valid that data set is.
I mean, like these are like tech savvy people most likely if they're running the contributor, right?
You'd be
Software.
surprised. We had to send reminders to about 15% of them on Monday.
Interesting. All right. Thank you very much. And yeah, so now we're going to move on to our next topic of this live stream. We're going to discuss the what I would say is one of the most significant features coming in Pictra, which is 7702, and like how would it affect smart wallets and account abstraction. We have from multiple new guests. We have Ansgar from the EF, and he's also one of the authors of 77. We have Richard, who's the CTO of Safe, the most widely used multi-sig smart contract wallet implementation. We have Nicholas, also from the Ethereum Foundation, and we have Christoph, who is the founder of Pimlico, one of the pillars of the account abstraction infrastructure out there. Welcome, everyone, and happy to have you all. I'll start with giving a brief introduction to 7702, and I think the most suitable person to do this is Ansgar, as he's one of the authors. So Ansgar, like, can you give us like a brief and rundown on what 7702 and what it opens up to the Ethereum users?
Yeah, sure, and thank you for having us. It's been quite the journey for this ERP in particular. Actually, it originally started as a different ERP 3074. If people still remember that, I had looked just now, like that was 4th of October 2020. So that's been a while. That came out of originally. So there was a couple of colleagues of mine and I. We were still over at the Quill team at Consensus. We had been working on account abstraction anyway already on like basically a predecessor of what later became ERP 437 that people are familiar with, and that Christoph will probably tell us a lot about in a second. And then we basically brainstormed, okay, what could we do with UAs in the meantime? And the idea was just, okay, let's try to give them as much smart contract capabilities as possible. Originally, kind of, we had this approach with 3074. Didn't end up making it onto the chain, and then in parallel, there's account abstraction ecosystem with smart accounts, with basically what Gnosis Safe already was well established, had been long-standing already back in 2020, but basically it was more of like its own thing, and then basically that ecosystem developed with 437 into more standardized ecosystem. And so when last year people basically looked at 3074 again and were like, wait, actually maybe now it's time to do something about UAs. The idea would be, okay, we need an update to that original proposal to make it compatible with all the things that had been happening in smart contract account abstraction land. And so basically 7702 now, you can think of it as basically a version of making UAs more powerful that is compatible with 437. And in terms of like what does it actually concretely do, I think, I mean, obviously there are a lot of technical details. I think for the people that maybe haven't looked into it so much yet, or like this is the first time they hear about it, really, what you should just think of it for your normal Ethereum wallets that you don't have any special capabilities, like your MetaMask or whatever kind of that UA wallet is that you might have. The idea is that you'll be able to delegate that account to a smart account implementation. And by doing so, basically now your existing account with all the assets you already have in there, right? You don't have to move anything. It will basically now be able to behave like a smart account. And so you'll be able to dip into that existing infrastructure that's already out there for all these smart accounts, and you'll basically seamlessly be able to use your UA as a smart account. And hopefully that'll And of course, to boil it down completely, like the meme is just, like now you don't no longer need to set a separate approve and transfer function, a transaction that can now be a single transaction. And to maybe set your expectations, that won't immediately work out of the box on all applications because they still need to support batching that into a single operation. So for a while, you'll probably still see individual pop-ups for a bunch of these things, but from now on, basically, these are on their way to the grave, and hopefully in the future, actions you perform are just a single click. Yeah, that's that. My brief summary.
Great. Yeah, thank you very much. But from your explanation, it sounds like 7702 is not really a replacement for any account abstraction infrastructure or 4337. I would like to hear more from this on Christoph. So Christoph, do you like, does 7702 like complement account abstraction infrastructure and 4337, or does it come to replace it?
Yeah, thanks. I definitely don't think it's a competitive proposal to 437. So just to give, I mean, Ansgar gave a great explanation here, but just to put them side by side, 702 at its most basic forms allows EOAs to become smart accounts, right? Any sort of smart contract or smart account that they want to be. And ERC 437, what it does, and I think it's a very sort of misunderstood EIP still, even after a couple of years, is it defines a standard interface for smart accounts that allows them to plug into the standard set of relayers called bundlers and paymasters. So, so basically, it just means that now if you upgrade your smart account, say with EIP 7702 or without, right, even just to create one as you do right now, you can now plug into this like very widespread set of relayers that will really efficiently do the relaying for you. And you can also plug into all the paymasters that have been created so far, right? So for instance, this will allow for things like ERC20 paymaster, ERC20 gas payments, having your gas payments be sponsored by a third party. Anything else you can really think of. These are the two main use cases that we've really seen take off. But it just means you don't have to build all of these from scratch anymore, right? You can really quickly delegate to a wallet and get started using Ethereum.
And maybe just to clarify, right? Like I think because there is indeed quite a bit of confusion about this always. There's basically two kind of sets of features and of EIPs, and one of them is about how can you upgrade towards a smart account, and then the other one is like how do you use the smart account. And these are really very, very different things. They are both called account abstraction because one of them is about moving you to account abstraction, the other one is actually about using account abstraction. But of course, you need both, and so 3074 or now 7702, those are about upgrading towards smart accounts. And then 4337 and, for example, this proposed future 7701 that some people might have heard about, those are about then using it. And obviously you need you need both halves. Otherwise, upgrading and then not being able to use it is useless. But of course, actually now with the upgrade capabilities, hopefully 437 will become much more useful for most users.
Yeah, and of course you don't have to use 447 if you don't want to, right? If you prefer a different relay mechanism, that's completely fine, and it's up to you as the owner of the wallet to decide what sort of smart account you're going to choose. And for instance, we've seen a couple people specifically, they have like very specific considerations and like trade-offs they want to make. So we've seen some people who are like, hey, I want to use this very more like unused relay mechanism, but one which is extremely optimized for, say, the minimum possible gas usage, right? And that's like a fair trade-off to make. We've seen most people who started using 7702 because again, it's been live on BSC and on Gnosis chain. I think for a little while now. They've mostly opted to use 447, but obviously that depends on the developer ecosystem moving forward.
Ahmad, you're muted.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I mean, awesome. To be honest, this will, it seems that it will bring a lot of user experience improvement to the Ethereum users, and very exciting to hear it. Now, on the like DApp dApp development and on like the actual wallet implementation itself. I'd like to direct my question to Richard here on like how ready do you feel like wallet implementations are, and how long do you feel like it would take for them to actually start using this new feature to actually make the user experience of Ethereum users better?
That's an interesting question, because for me, the challenge actually is more on the dApp side than it's on the wallet side, in a sense. I think there are quite some wallets that are engaging with 7702 that have a first implementation. We see also that MetaMask is engaging into this, and Trust Wallet and others. So this is also obviously where we see this being adopted. For us, because when I also look at Safe, because like the major challenge was always that dApps were not ready to engage into these advanced features, right? Like smart accounts had these advanced features for a long time, but they were a very small segment of the market, even so high value, smaller segment of the market. And therefore, dApps were less likely to say, hey, let's adopt these advanced features. Even so, there are RPC endpoints for this. You have a lot of standards that try to push this, because a majority of the market, which were UA based, did not support these features. And I think this is a major game changer here, right, Nick? Because now if you say MetaMask or Trust Wallet or these really big UA wallets support this too, then it's way more likely that it makes sense for you to implement it, and that obviously it's safe, and all the other smart contract accounts, they also benefit from it. Right? Like, and this is really where you say now we get the people to experience this advantage that smart accounts have, and that then at some point it will be this effect where people expect that every dApp uses this, right? Like my hope is that within the next 12 months, basically we don't have this two-step approve and interact anymore, but that you have this as a batch transaction always, right? Like, and this, there have been plenty of initiatives in the past that did not pull through, primarily because adoption of the dApps was not there. And here I really see that this is the first, like this will be an amplifier where then all smart contracts wallet will benefit from this. Similar, as Christoph said, also for 4337, right? Like I think we're just increasing the addressable market for 4337 and for a lot of these smarter feature accounts, because suddenly also EOAs are part of the addressable market, assuming that MetaMask and other big EOA wallets expose some of these features.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you very much, Richard. And one question to Nicholas here would be like, since you're like kind of one of the key people who are working on the full account abstraction on Ethereum side, how do you see this as a step forward to like the full migration to full account abstraction and like smart wallet of it for Ethereum? Is there like a path forward, or is this like a more of a stepping stone? How do you see the future for account abstraction on Ethereum, like for full AA support?
So it's always hard to tell the future of Ethereum, but it's definitely a stepping stone. It's not like the native account abstraction that everyone sees in the future. It's a step in between, I would say. So previously we had this great standard with 4337 who got a lot of adoption, but there is a lot of people that just use EOAs because it's the legacy way, and it put dApps in a situation where they had to cater for both flow, which is very complicated. So this is kind of like a one-shot proposal to solve this issue. And on the long run, we have different proposal like 7701, so the EIP right before, who is a serious contender for native account abstraction. So this is one of the contender for the next few forks, although it uses EOF, so it will have to change a little bit, I guess, because the EOF status is unknown these days. But yeah, this is going to be a big update, and probably the biggest wallet update in recent years, I think. So it's going to be super interesting to see how it rolls out.
Great. Well, thank you, Nicholas. And yeah, Anders, since you are the one who implemented 7702 and the Nethermind client, I want to ask you, like, what was the biggest challenge when implementing 7702? Was it like the actual implementation, the serialization, the mempool implementation, and edge cases that needed to be handled? Yeah, love to hear from you on this.
So 7702 brings in some invariants, or rather, it breaks some invariants that we're used to. So, for example, at the EVM layer, we're used to that you could check the transaction origin and transaction sender. And if it's the same, then you're on the first stack, and you must be an EUA. That's no longer the case. But what gave me some problems was so one of the things is that in order to set this delegation, we introduced this new transaction type, set code transaction, and it introduced gas operations outside the EVM. And there was some figuring out exactly all the different scenarios. How should that work? What if the transaction fails, and so on. So there was a bit of stuff that needs to be cleared up. But the most difficult part was probably the thinking about the transaction pool, because it's pretty difficult knowing exactly. I mean, we don't know for sure how people will use this, but at the same time, we also need to mitigate any sort of DOS attacks or DOS vectors. So the current implementations, we simply limit delegated accounts to only having one transaction in the pool at a time. And also a set code transaction cannot enter the pool if any of the authorities have transactions in the pool. And this is done because a delegated account can be swept by basically anything, which is another one of those things that breaks an invariant that we're used to. We used to have that only an EUA signed transaction can swipe that account. But since EUA now can be upgraded with contract logic, basically anything, anywhere can swipe that account.
Yeah, that's definitely adds to the challenges in client implementations. Speaking of challenges and DOS vectors, I want to talk to Ansgar about the potential security risks of 7702. I heard that with one click, someone could steal all my funds. Is that true now with 7702, Ansgar?
So obviously, it's always the case that like once you add more functionality to Ethereum, to the EVM, then that functionality can be used for good and for bad, and that does mean that like in principle there's new attack surfaces. I think the ecosystem here went through a lot of effort to make sure that it's as safe as it can possibly be. It's important to understand that like, while basically on the technical side, under the hood, what happens is that these upgrade operations are a transaction, similar to other transactions you send. The way that is expressed to the user for approval is very, very different. So all wallets that will support sending these transactions at all. So basically by default, if your wallet did not bother to, or did not yet have time to finalize shipping the support for 7702, then it will just be completely impossible for you to sign such an upgrade, to authorize such an upgrade. So you are safe by default. And then any wallet that actually does add support for for 7702, basically for these upgrades, will do so and will express that to the user in a completely separate way from sending a transaction. So you'll never be in the situation where you just you just thought all you did was sending a transaction, and then and all of a sudden your account is gone. It'll be like very clear, very separate, and then there's also further best practices, further rules for wallet to ensure that only safe implementations are delegated to. I don't know, Nico, I think you may be the most on top of that kind of the latest state there. Can you briefly summarize what kind of the state of the ecosystem there is around best practices?
Yeah, you mean security best practices for? Yeah, so there is a few points. You have the reentrancy guard, which is like for a long time, the app developers used to assume that the message sender was the transaction origin, and this was already a bad practice, actually, but this this is now a dangerous practice. So this is one of the key things that has to change. Then you have some initialization security consideration. So when you initialize the contract, you have to make sure that you implement the initiate function in a careful way. So one way to do this is to use the 4337 entry point, which has been modified to accept 7702 delegation contracts. So if you point at the latest version, the 0.8, you have this cool benefit. Then you have storage collision to take care of. So this is something that developers and EVM developers are already very aware of. So when you deploy a contract, you must make sure that you don't have conflict with pre-existing storages. So you can have a storage slot that conflicts with the previous contract. So this is a bit dangerous. Then you have phishing risk. Well, those have always been there. It has always been dangerous to sign transactions. So you still have to be careful as before, but you have to be extra careful for the type 4 because basically you can delegate on multiple chains if you use the chain ID 0. And you need obviously to delegate to a contract that is somewhat safe. So what we recommend is to delegate to contracts that are as small as possible. So the less lines of code you have, the less bug you might have. So this is one way to look for it. So look for simple solution. Very often security is in simplicity.
Yep, thank you very much. I mean, so just to recap on the security side, because I think it's an important point, this new authorization tuple that you need to sign to actually delegate to an account is not something that wallets right now already support. They need to add the support to sign this new authorization tuple or this new type of message that does the delegation. And if they add the support, they're not going to allow just any dApp to probably like try to make you sign such a message or such an authorization tuple, because that will open you up to this type of attack, phishing attack, right? So what will probably happen is that the wallets will actually whitelist certain implementations for the account abstraction. Am I correct in my assumption here, Ansgar, Nicholas?
Yeah, that's my understanding, and that's what we're saying. That the nice thing is that we made sure that signature is a completely new signature type, so that there's no way that existing wallets already exposed that accidentally, basically. So everyone who uses a wallet that does not yet support 7702 is completely safe. They can never accidentally create such a delegation authorization. And then the wallets that do add support for it will add support in a safe way, in a careful way, so that it's not like sending a normal transaction where it's just like easy to click on something that you didn't quite understand what it did. Like sign in with Ethereum or something, click, and now all your money is gone. That's not how that works. It will be done in a very careful way where wallets make sure that they only allow delegation to implementations that are safe and in a way that is safe for the user.
And actually, I would even say that most wallets I've come across, they're not even whitelisting just a couple sort of smart account sort of standards out there, right? And actually choosing one specifically and trying to make it so the user doesn't actually. I mean, there's two ways of saying it. The one is like doesn't have a choice. Second way of saying it is that like the user doesn't have to think about it, right? So you can decide which the wording you prefer there. But yeah, basically I've seen a lot of wallets just say pick something like safe and just stick with it, or pick some sort of other smart account format and give that to the user with like an optional a pop-up that appears when you start using the wallet after 1702, which will prompt you to sort of upgrade if you're comfortable with that.
Okay.
Yeah,
Thank you.
maybe
Christoph.
on that point, just like a very quick note, that's not so related to security, but because of that, is just that's why we talked early in the call about like 437 and the role that it plays, and as Christoph was saying, like it might very well be that a lot of the default flows for wallets end up not even using it, right? Like they might choose their own kind of more efficient relay mechanism or things like that. But the important thing is that like the default implementations have support for 437, because that makes sure that we still have the kind of the public mempool that 437 recreates for smart user ops, smart account user ops, basically. So we have that still as the backbone for all wallets, and then we can have more efficient kind of infra on top of that.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Thank you, Christoph and Ansgar, for that. And one final question before we conclude the segment to probably Richard. Is there any plans for Safe UI to add a feature where you can, instead of creating a new account, to actually like delegate your EOA account to safe smart contract implementation, and then be able to use the safe UI for operations, or is this not something that Safe App is planning to add?
It is something that we actively played around with, and we have some prototypes for this. I think it's a little bit checking what is the priority here, because also this is something where we on our own need to partner with somebody else. Safe Wallet does not own any private keys, right? Like, so a MetaMask would have to delegate to Safe or a Trust Wallet. It's definitely interesting, and it's more prioritization question. Where do we see this, and how does it have impact also on our existing users, and also the user segment where the Safe Wallet interface is being used right now? So it's not something where I'd say we will see this immediately after 7702 goes live.
Mm-hmm. But the safe contract implementation is ready, right? So from the smart contract side, safe contract implementation is ready for the 7702 delegations to come in.
So by default, no, there are some adjustments required. And also here we would have to see how these are being adopted. So this is, again, if you look in our documentation, you can find documentation. There are a couple of different approaches. And also here, it depends very much what do you want to do, which approach you should take. I think 7702 in itself, because you come from a single owner EOA going then to a smart account, this needs to be considered. And this is not how Safe out of the box work, right? Like it assumes you're setting it up as like you initialize it with one or multiple owners. So there's definitely some adjustments required. And here we really see that depending on how the users take it, this is something where it's a small change required. This can be easily done. It's more a prioritization question.
Yeah. Thank you, Richard. And yeah, thank you, Ansgar, Nicolas, Christoph, and Anders for all your insights into 7702 and into account abstraction in the Pectra upgrade. It was an honor to have you. We're probably gonna move on to our next topic of the stream, which is around scaling. And I'll leave the floor to Mark to moderate the segment. Mark, are you?
Yes, I'm here.
Hi.
So yeah, welcome everyone to the staking and validator segment of the live stream. So there are some big changes to staking arriving in the Pectra upgrade that we're going to be discussing today. So with me, I have Philip Schommers, who's the head of infrastructure at Gnosis, who's leading the development of Gnosis Chain. We have Terence Tao, a core developer from Off-Chain Labs and a maintainer of the Prism Ethereum consensus client. We have Dimitri Gusako, who's the tech lead for the community staking module at Lido. Joaquin Gutierrez is the head of sales at TwinStake, who are an institutional grade non-custodial staking provider. And we have Langers, who's the general manager of Rocket Pool, which is a decentralized Ethereum staking protocol. So I want to start off this discussion around MaxEB, which is probably the largest staking change which is going live in Pectra. So Terence, do you think you'd be able to start us off by sort of giving us a high-level breakdown of MaxEB?
Of course. First of all, thanks for having us. And it's 2 a.m. here, so sorry I'm like a little incoherent right now, but let me try to tell you what MaxEB is. So I think today, like the way to look at it is that like every validator, your deposit is 32 ETH, and then you get 1 vote, right? And then typically how it happens is that say today, if you are like a staking pool, you're like a staking exchange, you run definitely more than 1 validators per node, and then like you have multiple votes, right? And then how consensus layer client work is that you essentially you basically have your beacon node software, and then you have a validator client, which is a lot more lightweight. All it does is send message. You make sure the private key is secure, and then but then you have multiple votes, right? And then the idea is that could you consolidate them into could you consolidate them such that you only send 1 message, but you represent multiple validators, right? And the idea, why would you do it, is that like network is gossip, right? And then you don't want it to essentially be more spamming than it should be. And then you can think of today, we have 1 million validators, and that's a lot of message to propagate through an epoch, right? And then consensus layer has this notion of finality, which is a very, very nice thing that application uses. And you want to reduce the finality time in a way that is very useful to applications. They don't have to wait more than 14 minutes an epoch. But to do that, you have to reduce your votes because of how much network message you propagate, right? And then MaxEB opens the door for that, such as like single stop finality, 3 stop finality. But we need a validator to opt in to this consolidation change. They need to essentially sign a message saying that here are my keys. I have 100 validators, and I only want to use essentially one key to represent those 100 validators. And that's what MaxEB enables this new next set of scaling roadmap. And that's very exciting. Yeah, I hope that it explains well.
Thank you very much for the intro, and also yeah, thank you for staying up to join us. I hope you have enough coffee. So next question is for Philly. So in terms of MaxEB, how does doing consolidations actually look for a validator? So it's already been live on Gnosis chain for around a week. So kind of how does it actually look to submit a consolidation request?
Right. So technically speaking, doing a consolidation, or rather, if you wanted to consolidate 2 validators, you have to consolidate one on itself first, or create a new validator with 0x2 withdrawal keys. But basically, it's quite complex. So you have to do a contract call that contains the 2 public keys, the source validator and the target validator. You also have to pay some fee, which is a bit obscure to calculate, let's say. So we came up with an interface to do all of this, which is not fully tested yet. I can demo it really quickly, but probably you should not use it in production quite yet. But yeah, we came up with an interface that makes it possible to consolidate a lot of validators, because on Gnosis Chain specifically, validators are quite cheap. So users ended up having, or validators ended up having a lot of them, let's say hundreds or thousands. So consolidating all of those manually would obviously take a ton of time, which is not great. So our UI basically makes it possible to set a target balance for each validator. So we can say, for example, I want to have, let's say, 1,500 ETH per consolidated validator. And then it will automatically consolidate all of the validators so that you have the least amount of validators in the end with the balance you configured. Not sure if I can quickly share my screen to kind of demonstrate it, but if not, sure, okay. Well, I can actually, it's disabled by the host, but it's fine. I can maybe share the link at some point later, it's okay. But yeah, basically, we have a UI for it. It's way easier to do than manually because it's fairly complicated contract calls. It works with SAFE and also EIP 7702, basically to batch requests, because if not, you would have to sign, one request per validator, which would also be suboptimal. So we're actually using 2 new features of Pectra, which is quite interesting. And yeah, if you want to try it out, and it's consolidate.gnosischain.com. But yeah, we'll publicize a bit more about it once it's fully ready.
Awesome, thank you very much. Yeah, so I'm quite interested to learn more sort of what are the perspective of stakers on MaxEB. So Joaquin, so you're at TwinStake. Are you guys planning to consolidate your validators? Like, what's your take on this?
Thanks for having me on. Well, first of all, MaxEB is a really exciting enhancement with features that are useful for both the operators and delegators. As to your question, it's important to note that as a purely non-custodial staking provider, we're not the ones making the decisions as to the consolidation of the validators. It's actually our delegator clients, the asset owners, that make this decision. And so we take instruction from them. And what we've been doing over the last few weeks is to engage very actively with them to educate them on some of the key benefits and risks, and understand from our point of view what factors drive their sort of desired validator set size or configuration. And in that, there's a series of different things that they take into account, like slashing risk and enhanced rewards or compounding of rewards, simplified reporting, etc. What I can share from these conversations, and to a degree it was a little bit surprising to us, to TwinStake, is that we expected the reduced operational overhead to be one of the biggest selling points, as well as the compounding of rewards for very large Ethereum stakers, because our clients, we are institutional only, and we serve some of the biggest Ethereum investors in the world, and they have very big size, and so that matters a lot. Compounding rewards matters a lot, and reducing your operational overhead matters a lot. However, there are other considerations that actually weighed a bit heavier on their decision making. First of all, the risk or the fear of potential higher slashing due to correlated slashing events was front and center in their minds. If you ask them, adding a few more bips of compounded yield isn't worth the risk. And so that was the first thing that we found out from clients, but also the way that the very numerous validator and sweeping of rewards setup works currently has actually become a feature that large ETH investors love, and I'll explain why. So when a lot of these really, really big ETH investors tend to be either ETF or ETP providers who have a regulatory mandate to meet redemptions for whatever size from their investors for within 1 or 2 days, and other large investors are hedge funds or liquid trading strategies which need a high level of liquidity. And so they've actually learned to model for the reward sweeping, and they make it a part of their liquidity management. And so the outcome is that while clients receive the potential to compound rewards and to consolidate the validator set with enthusiasm, they're probably not going to start doing it. Our clients, Twin Stakes, very large ETF and ETP and hedge fund clients, are probably not going to start doing it from the very beginning. And instead, they're probably going to direct new inflows to the larger validators and fund those with a sort of a sweet spot of around 500 to 800 ETH. This is what we've been hearing from them. And what we expect is in the future, once they've seen how this has played out for others and seen if there's any correlated slashing events and how the consolidation queue has actually played out in real time, then they'll do some game theory and around how they consolidate all of their existing validators.
Thank you very much for that breakdown. Yeah, it definitely sounds like there's some interesting trade-offs there with consolidations. Like you get the benefits operationally and everything, but then you don't want to consolidate too much and put all your eggs in one basket. But I think we can delve a little bit deeper into this a bit later. But I'd like to hear a bit from the perspective of sort of these liquid staking protocols. So we have on a call with us Dimitri from Lido and Darren from Rocket Pool. So I'm interested to hear from both of you, like what is your take on MaxiB? Would you kind of agree with what Joaquin said there? Maybe we can start with Dimitri.
Yeah, thanks for inviting me. And as usually with Lido, for you guys to remember and to keep in mind, Lido is a DAO, so anything that I'll be saying right now is mostly my personal opinion or opinions of the contributors. However, the final decisions are always after the DAO, as Joaquin mentioned. In their case, it's clients. In our case, it's LDO holders and DAO voters. So for Lido as a contributor, we believe that consolidations is a really cool feature, and having the ability to consolidate validators, especially for such a large protocol as Lido, where the majority of the stake is uselessly distributed between small validators and can easily be consolidated within each of our professional node operators, and even some CSM operators are currently operating enough stake to consolidate it. The problem is that unlike simple staking solutions where the withdrawal credentials are not a smart contract or not a protocol, but a simple smart contract, maybe safe or just an EOA, you can do consolidations pretty easily, and the only thing you need to do is to fix the off-chain accounting, because most of the accounting usually happens off-chain. With liquid staking protocols, all of the accounting, all of the stuff happens on-chain. And since when most of the liquid staking protocols we see now were built with the assumption that 32 ETH is a constant thing for a validator, and validator will always be 32 ETH, to actually support the dynamic balances of validators, there's tons of effort required, first of all, to develop that. And secondly, and most importantly, to ensure that this upgrade is secure, that this transition can indeed be done with no issues to accounting at all. So from the operational perspective, that's cool to have large validators. And I personally believe that the majority of the created validators in Lido should be consolidated, while still keeping some of them unconsolidated for the same redemption thing that Joaquin mentioned. Because if the redemptions are not that high, like say 100 ETH, it makes no sense to exit a full validator. And if we are talking about partial withdrawals, which will also be available with Pectra and with MaxiB, we need to take into account that voluntary exits, the exit when the validator publish the exit message, is free of charge, and you can simply do that from the node operator side, while partial withdrawals as well as consolidations and any other execution layer requests, they should be paid, and the fee is dynamic and calculated, yes, in a pretty weird way, so you can never know beforehand, would it worth it to make a partial withdrawal request right now, or would it not due to market conditions? So the overall sentiment is that yes, Lido contributors are definitely aiming to prepare implementations for MaxDB support. It's pretty early now to say how long would it take, because we are at the research phase right now. But again, it takes time. So most likely you will hear more updates on the actual plans in the future. But we believe that that's a cool thing, and that would definitely help to scale Ethereum and to optimize most of, like, a lot of the processes regarding node operator management and validator management within Lido protocol.
Thank you. Yeah, it sounds like it's been quite a big effort then to support all these new changes from the LST protocol side. So now, so Darren, what is your kind of perspective from Rocket Pool? Is it kind of similar or different challenges there?
Yeah, actually, it's very similar. So thank you very much for having me. So we're actually working on our latest release, which is called Saturn, which will help us kind of uber scale and make us more collateral efficient and that sort of thing. With Saturn, we've actually decided that Saturn will be compatible with MaxDB, but it won't use it from day one. So from a design perspective, we're not kind of like designing ourselves out of MaxDB, but we're not going to kind of like use it from day one. And that's essentially because a similar thing from Dimitri, there is a lot of design work to kind of utilize MaxDB efficiently, and particularly with compounding validators. So we have to kind of like rethink a lot of things, and so that's why we're not doing it on day one. We essentially have the same redemption issue as Joachim and Dimitri. Rewards come back and they're used to spin up new validators, but that would be solved by compounding. But it's also used for withdrawals as well. So that's a key thing for us, is to make sure that does keep coming back, or a certain amount of that keeps coming back. There's also a strong mechanism that actually helps maintain the RETH peg that would be kind of like affected as well. So we have to build things. We have to build things with a lot of thought to make sure that you get it right. I guess one of the things is, we have 2,000 node operators, so our median number of nodes per validator is actually 2. So we're not necessarily the target of the Rocket Pool is good for decentralization, but we're not necessarily going to make a lot of impact in terms of consolidations for MaxDB. But I do think it's an interesting feature, and that's why we're not coding ourselves out of it, because we do think that we may be able to use it effectively in the future. We just need to kind of adjust and make sure that we do it right, essentially.
Thank you very much. So yeah, I guess we kind of got the take of sort of like large staking operators, liquid staking protocols. But Philippe, I'd like to kind of hear your opinions on, do you think that MaxDB can have benefits for solo stakers?
I definitely do think that it does, yeah. So maybe the consolidation part is not that interesting, because let's face it, like most solo validators, I would say, are not running hundreds of validators, because just one on Ethereum is obviously very expensive already. And managing maybe 3 keys in comparison to 1 is not very interesting, or doesn't really change a lot. But the consolidation part, for sure, I think is very helpful. So imagine you are, again, it's a lot of money already, but like a small validator with 50 ETH, let's say, you would be able to stake one validator with 32 ETH, and then in the end you have 18 left with which you can not do anything. So you would have to find yields somewhere else if you're interested in that, for example, in a liquid staking provider or whatnot. But this kind of, then you're not really a solo validator anymore, but also are doing something else on the side. Now it's compounding, and the fact that you can have an effective balance that is anywhere between 32 and 2048 ETH. You could just put the 50 ETH on one of your validators, and you'll earn yields on the full amount, which is absolutely awesome, because the 18 ETH you previously had left over are now actually well, used in effective balance and earn yield basically. And then with the compounding, of course, that makes everything a lot easier. You don't have to wait every time for the balance to get swept and then to have 32 ETH again to spin up a new validator. All of this is just built in. So yeah, I think it's awesome for small validators, maybe not the full EIP, but at least compounding and the variable effective balance for sure is.
Yeah, I think it's cool that we're seeing those benefits, both for the biggest stakers on the network and also the solo stakers are both seeing benefits from this. So a question for Terence now. So sort of as a developer as well, I'm excited to see what MaxiB is going to unlock in terms of being able to scale the network. So Terence, do you think you could speak a bit about this?
Right. So I think, like I said earlier, there is like the future roadmap, right? What we want to enable. And I think to enable that, we need to take the incremental step, and MaxCB kind of opens the door for that. For example, like any sort of like single star finality or even three-star finality require you to reduce the number of messages, votes in the network and stuff, and MaxDB enables that nicely, because now, say if you have 1,000 keys running a single node, you just have one message, and that helps alleviate the burden of the network. So I guess it depends on like what we want, right? Do we want to reduce finality? Do we want to reduce the slot time? Do we want to increase target blobs per slot, or increase the gas limit? And MaxDB opens the door for us. But it also depends on people have to opt in. It depends on the usage of the network. That remains to be seen. But now we have these options to do it, and that's very nice. Yeah.
Awesome. That's very exciting. Yeah, I guess we'll just kind of have to see what happens with consolidations and if we do end up with that sort of extra bandwidth to play with in terms of scaling. So I think we've gone through in pretty good detail MaxCB. So now I'd like to move on to EIP 7002, which is execution layer triggerable exits. Philippe, would you like to sort of give us an introduction to this EIP?
Sure. So maybe to get, well, to start from the beginning, pre-Pectra, well, there was always a signing key that signs messages for the validator. So those are basically your key source that you use with the deposit CLI or the launchpad basically on Ethereum. And then you have a withdrawal key, which allows you, well, which in the past didn't do that much, I would say. So that's, I mean, the active key is the one that is actually validating all the time on the validator. If you lose it, the worst that can happen is you get slashed, so you lose a bit of money. But in any case, if someone steals your key, you cannot actually, I mean, they cannot steal your money. They can just get you slashed, or yeah, and that's it. The withdrawal key now will enable you to, well, trigger exits or withdrawals. Whereas in the past, let's imagine if I was, for example, a small staking provider and I allowed friends to, well, delegate ETH to me, then basically that ETH would be locked into the validator, and only the active key, so the signing key, would be able to actually exit the validator. So I'm operating validators, a friend gives me 32 ETH or just delegates 32 ETH to that validator. I cannot steal their money, but I can effectively just lock it in and make it so that they never get back, get access back to their 32 ETH. This obviously is very bad because, I mean, you have to trust your validator or the person that operates the validators for you. And let's say, I mean, if it's just this small scenario where it's me and a friend, if I die, for example, they would lose access to their ETH forever. That's extremely bad. Now with Pectra, the withdrawal key is actually able to trigger exits. So my friends could just say, okay, I don't trust this guy anymore, this operator. He doesn't want to release my funds, or he's just, I mean, blackmailing me or whatever. Well, now he can just say, okay, I want to exit the validator. or now I want to withdraw my funds. And this relationship between those, like the staking operator and the person who actually owns the funds is way better in the sense after Pectra.
Thank you very much for the intro. Yeah, so it seems like a really important change then, like not being able to have your ETH held hostage by this active validator key. Yeah, I'm sure this is going to be very influential on a lot of like staking operators and kind of staking pools. So I'm interested to hear you guys' takes on it. Maybe we can start this time with like Darren. How do you think this is going to affect Rocket Pool?
Yeah, we will definitely use this EIP. So there are several things that we'll kind of use it for. So the first thing is performance. So essentially ejecting node operators that are significantly underperforming. And that way we keep the whole protocol running at kind of like a high level. We still want to support decentralization. So that's why I say significantly underperforming rather than just underperforming. The other thing is user experience and security. So being able to exit via our withdrawal key is very, very useful. So if your node is actually taken over, you can actually exit via them. So they can't hold it hostage. You can use your withdrawal key to exit as well. Similar thing to what Philippe was saying. And then there's also kind of like safety. So, being a decentralized protocol, we have to kind of work in an adversarial sort of environment. So from a crypto economic perspective, it's really useful to be able to eject node operators that misbehave. So they're kind of like the three areas where we will kind of like touch on in terms of using that EIP. So it's a really useful EIP for us.
Okay, I see. So like, yeah, I'd also like to hear from Dimitri on this for Lido, and also in terms of this sort of safety stuff, have you seen problems with this in the past, like with sort of bad operators holding stuff hostage?
Yeah. So no, we haven't seen such a problems, luckily. And I want to say that Rocket Pool guys are actually crazy because they launched their permissionless staking protocol without EIP 7002 with the real assumption that the stake can be hostage. So they initially started with 16 ETH, and if the stake is hostage and the validator is offline, it will eventually leak up to 16 ETH and then will exit. 16 ETH of a bond will be enough to cover, and so on and so forth. But that was an initial assumption, and then they moved lower, and now they are offering 80 ETH bond, and they will offer even less bond, still without EIP 7002. So the only reason why Lido DAO actually approved the development of the community staking module, the project somewhat similar to what Rocket Pool does, so it's a permissionless staking in Lido, was the fact that EIP 7002 was about to get agreed for Pectra. Because without this EIP, again, this problem with hostage becomes like, it's real. And the only way how Lido was able to overcome this problem is by having a curated set of node operators, so known operators who put their reputation at stake and who have the business of their own outside Lido, so that it will be economically unfeasible for them, and it would make no sense for them to take hostage stake from the protocol because they will lose their reputation. But with 7002, now there's no reputation involved, and the protocol can ensure that all the ETH that users have deposited and that ETH was delegated to node operators, no matter permissioned or permissionless, can always be redeemed. However, that creates an opposite effect now. So before 7002, no matter how your staking protocol is designed, and even if your staking protocol for some reason gets compromised, node operators can always say, okay, we will not release this ETH. This ETH will still be on Beacon chain and effectively protecting funds until the situation is somehow resolved. Now, the risk of liquid staking protocol getting hacked is elevated, because now with this EIP, in case of a hack, in case of an issue within withdrawal credentials used by a staking protocol, hackers now will be able not only to get access to the funds that are skimmed within the lifetime of the validators, but they will also be able to trigger exits for the validators. So that's why Lido is currently making final steps on dual governance, this extra layer of protection from the governance capture, to ensure that there's like no way for either LDO holders or someone else to get access to withdrawal credentials. And the security of the withdrawal credentials itself is like not guaranteed, but more or less, I would say not guaranteed, but ensured by multiple audits. So each and every upgrade passed through multiple audits, and that would be the case for any upgrades of the withdrawal credentials contract. So for Lido, yes, again, that's a great enabler, and everything that Langers mentioned absolutely echoes to us, and we are basically working in the same direction here, while at the same time keeping in mind that, again, unlike Rocket Pool and Lido, there's a single withdrawal credential contract, so it should be as secure as possible, and Lido Contributors has always been working on it and will continue working on it to make sure that everything is not just new opportunities, but also full security that has been here for a while. Yeah.
Nice, that's super interesting. I mean, yeah, you can see how it can increase sort of security as an individual operator, but I hadn't really thought about, potentially increasing the risk of there being a bug in one of these protocols, and then suddenly you can just trigger loads of exits and you kind of increase your attack surface there. I want to get Joaquin's take, but just quickly, I wanted Langers, do you have any kind of response to that in regards to sort of why, why Rocket Pool kind of deployed the stuff with before 7002, or like whether that made sense to do?
Yeah, awesome. Thank you for coming back to me. So when we released with 16 ETH mini pools, it was 16 ETH from node operators and 16 ETH from liquid stakers. And so they're actually putting as much at risk as they were essentially borrowing from liquid stakers. So it's not asymmetrical. With our 8 ETH mini pools, it is asymmetrical, but kind of acceptable. That's an acceptable risk for us in terms of they are still putting an 8 ETH bond up, and if anything, if they, they're actually putting that kind of at risk. In Lido's case, its reputation. With us, it's 8 ETH. So there's a bond there at least. So that's kind of how we've played it out in terms of with 16 ETH there was no risk. With 8 ETH there is some risk, but we were willing to take that risk to be able to scale. It's marginal risk, as to say.
Okay, thank you. And it sounds like with 7002, it's going to unlock like making this even safer, which is great.
Yeah.
So Joaquin, from like Twin Stakes perspective, would you say there's some kind of big differences there between you and like the liquid staking protocols, or kind of similar things on your side?
Well, I think we try to cater for some of the same problems. We obviously focus it from the point of view of the institutional clients that we serve. They've always been concerned about being able to exit their validators. They are very large regulated investment managers. They have internal risk frameworks that force them to have the ability to do so, and regulatory obligations to do so. And so in the past, how we've solved for this, because it is not something we start to offer now, but we've tried to reduce or completely eliminate any dependency in ourselves for our clients to be able to exit their validators. In the past, we've done this by pre-signing exit messages for all of the validators, so that if something happens to us, clients could always broadcast them and therefore exit the validators and recover their ETH. Obviously, this is a better option. Both are still possible simultaneously, so this gives a lot more options to our clients to control the recovery of their assets. And so this is actually probably the item from all of the EAPs within Pectra that they are most excited about.
Oh, interesting. So sort of by pre-signing the exits is kind of seems like a sort of workaround where you didn't actually need then 7002. Like, is there some trade-off here where is that kind of less secure in some way? Or?
Well, the pre-signing the exit messages was what we did prior to Pectra. We expect a mix of the pre-signed exit messages plus execution layer controlled withdrawals to be used going forward. It will be up to our clients to decide what is best for them. They could probably, for even more redundancy, we could do both. They could still receive the pre-signed exit messages and store those themselves or with their custodians, because most of them work through custodians, qualified custodians, regulated custodians, and they would choose as and when they needed to utilize one of the two methods. Imagine that they've corrupted the files for some reason, the pre-signed exit messages, then they could always trigger the withdrawals at execution layer level with the withdrawal key. So this just makes their life a lot easier. They don't have to trust anybody. I wouldn't say that we ever hold clients hostage, but definitely they want to know that if something happens to us, that obviously they have all the options possible, and so this only reinforces it, and they're very pleased about it.
Okay, nice, thank you. So it sounds like you could kind of do the same thing, but it's a much more like robust kind of fallback mechanism that we can now depend on. So just one more thing I kind of want to cover in terms of EIPs is 6110. So this is putting validated deposits on chain. So this seems like mostly quite a technical change, but also with some significant like UX benefits. But Terence, would you be able to sort of give us a breakdown of this?
Yeah, definitely. So today, I think it's important to realize that consensus chain, the beacon chain, follows the execution chain in terms of deposit, right? So you have the smart contract on the execution layer and user sends their 32 ETH deposit, but the beacon chain has to learn about the deposit basically. So the way it does is it basically reading the smart contract's log message, but before the merge, how it works is that we don't want reorg to happen like badly. So we have this kind of like magic number that we wait for about 8 to 12 hours until there's consensus on the execution layer on the deposit contract, and then you consume the message. That's how validators gets in queued, activated, and becomes active, right? But after the merge, that it doesn't really make sense to do that because consensus layer and the execution layer, they are one single unit basically. So and then there's this engine API between consensus layer and execution layer. So we can actually utilize the engine API even better in that sense. So what 6110 does is that for the engine API, it actually feeds the deposit message from the execution layer to the consensus layer. So instead of waiting 8 to 12 hours to monitor the log to ensure there's no reorg, you just have to wait until the finalized epoch. And then you can consume the deposit message from the execution layer to the consensus layer. So it kind of shortens that validator's activation window in a way. So it's more efficient. It's definitely less buggy in a way because this makes more sense. And then also a UX improvement too. Instead of waiting like 8 hours, now you can just wait until finalized epoch for the deposit to be consumed. So yeah.
Thanks for the breakdown. Yeah, sounds like definitely a big upgrade in terms of UX. Yeah, I think we're kind of running out of time here. So yeah, but thank you all so much for joining. Like, it's been really exciting to learn more about some of these upgrades that are happening for staking. Just to sort of wrap up, Philippe, do you want to leave us with sort of practical steps for stakers? Like, what do they need to do? Do they need to consolidate or anything, or are they just fine?
Yeah. So I mean, the first thing, as always, during a hard fork, please update your nodes. If you don't, they won't keep following the chain. So they will stop attesting, stop earning anything, and actually they will start bleeding out of losing ETH, basically. So make sure you updated your execution and consensus layer nodes. And after that, I would just say, start by chilling a bit. Don't do anything, and then make sure you understand what you're basically getting into. You don't have to consolidate. You don't have to upgrade your credentials or your validators to become compounding. And you basically don't have to do anything. That being said, now that the withdrawal credentials actually have more power, for example, to exit validators, and they also get the money back, I would first make sure that those are secure as possible. So maybe you would consider, I don't know, upgrading to a safe or some EOA that is actually safe. And after that, you can definitely start consolidating. Now, for smaller validators, I mean, it was discussed before, but there is a trade-off. So, for example, if you have 3 keys and you do something bad with your validators, you could get slashed on one, but keep the other 2 live, which would be safer. If you consolidate all of them together and you get slashed, you lose ETH on all of those, all on that total amount. So that's a bit more unsafe. So for the consolidation part for smaller validators, maybe doesn't make a lot of sense. I would still probably go through with it, but you can also move each validator individually to become compounding without that additional slashing risk. So I would start with updating the validators to become compounding, and then for consolidations, you can think about it if it makes sense to manage only 1 key, for example. But in general, for smaller validators, I would not necessarily recommend it. For larger ones, for sure. Smaller, no. But yeah, just make sure you update your nodes as always. If you haven't done it yet, it's probably too late for the hard fork, but still go ahead right now with it because, I mean, you will miss it anyways. And then afterwards, just make sure you understand everything that's happening. Wait maybe for UIs to come out that are safe to use, because doing consolidations and key upgrades manually is a bit complicated. And just, I would say, take your time. There's no stress.
Awesome. Well, thanks again for joining, everyone. And I think now we're going to head into the next segment.
Sweet. I'm not sure if there was a introduction or anything, but yeah, I guess I'll just take over. We only have 25 minutes left until Pectra is pushed. So I guess, yeah, without further ado, I welcome my 3 guests for this section, which is on layer 2 scaling and DA, the EIPs that are covering those sections. So yeah, there's a couple of EIPs in here related to increasing number of blobs, making blob usage more attractive by making call data more expensive, and then making blob params more easy to customize. To talk about this, I'm going to welcome Marcin Sobczuk, core dev at Nethermind, who's implemented a blob pool for Dencun and is now working on PeerDAS. Stefano De Angelis, a researcher at Nethermind, who's working on the DA in general since the Dencun upgrade. And we also have Ansgar, who's jumped in at the last moment, back from the previous section, who's going to talk about, again, scaling from his perspective as someone who's writing the EIPs that we're actually going to talk about today, and who is an active thought leader in the space. So welcome, guys. I'm not sure. Are you guys all here? Are you here? I can't even see.
Oh, hi. I'm trying to figure it out. So,
sweet. Is Ansgar here as well?
Yes. Sorry, I'm here.
Epic. No. It's just I can't see anything with like 6 different tabs open. Okay, sweet. So I guess we'll jump straight into the EIP. So first, I'd like to cover 7840, which Marcin, you have some thoughts on, which is related to configurable blob params.
Hi. So APF for 7840 is adding a new object to client configuration files, blob schedule. It contains the target blob count per block and max blob count per block for each fork. And this way of handling changes of blob parameters, at this point, it is just making testing easier. We can experiment with various blob parameters by simply changing configs. But like for future, it is also a prerequisite for BPO hard forks, block parameters only hard forks. To be clear, it is not a part of Pectra hard fork. It is specified in IP 7892, which will be a part of Fusaka next hard fork. And as a whole, when BPO will be delivered, it will allow for doing hard forks with changes only in block parameters, and it will make preparation to that kind of hard fork and testing before it way easier. BPO forks will take place at specified timestamps. At least it's specified like that today, but the spec is not finalized, so it can change. In client configuration, in blob schedule, just instead of name of the fork like Cancun or Prague, there will be a timestamp, like a timestamp for the first slot in some epoch, and at this point, just block parameters will be changed. Like to be clear again, it's not a part of this fork, but 7820, which is a part of this fork, is important prerequisite, and it is already making testing easier.
Sweet. Okay, cool. So apart from 7840, there's also 7691, which is related to doubling the blob target. Stefano, did you have some notes prepared on that? If you could talk us through what it is and what the motivation behind it is.
Yeah, sure. So let's say before Dankung upgrade, rollups were using cold data to store transaction data on the layer 1 for data availability. The problem with that is that cold data is permanent storage. So permanent storage is expensive and also impacts the gas fees of the execution. With the AP 4844 and Dankung upgrade, we introduced blobs. Blobs are specific storage portion that can be used for L2 transaction data for data availability. And blobs have been introduced with a new transaction type, with the Dankung upgrade, and also with a new completely free market. So we are now actually decoupling fees paid for storage, L2 data, and fees paid for execution on the layer 1. And this improved a lot the gas fees on Ethereum, and also created a completely new market for data storage. With the Dankung upgrade, we started in a way conservatively, which means that for each block, we started with 3 blobs of 128 kilobytes of data on the target, with a maximum of 6 blobs per block. And this conservative approach was mainly due to the way we designed blobs. So because of course we decided to separate data stored for blobs from the block. We also improved like the block size, but at the same time, the way blobs are designed, for every block proposal, validators have to fetch the blobs that have been proposed with the block, and also verify that the blobs have been included in that specific block. And the way it works is that in blocks, we only have commitments to the blobs, while the blobs are distributed on a separate global topic on the peer-to-peer network. So validators, before attesting on the validity of a block, they have to fetch the blobs and verify the commitment within the block. Of course, as you can see here, there is a bandwidth limitation because the bandwidth requirements will scale linearly with the blob count. So with the Dankung upgrade, we had three blobs on target, And by observing the network, we realized that network was doing pretty well. So there was space for an improvement. And that's where Pectra upgrade is coming in. So Pectra upgrade is doubling the blob count allowed for each block, moving from 3 on the target to 6 blobs per block, with a maximum of 9 blobs per block. So we are actually doubling the throughput for layer 2s to publish data on the layer 1.
Sweet. And then, yeah, I guess doubling on its own sounds like, yeah, as you mentioned, we sort of assumed it was safe to double, but this sort of sits on quite a long path on the scaling roadmap. And I know that Ansgar actually co-wrote this EIP. So Ansgar, maybe do you want to jump in here and sort of maybe talk about where this EIP sits on the path and what should we expect next?
Yeah, thanks. I think Stefan already explained it very well. Basically, the innovation with data availability is, of course, that you don't actually need the data within, like, when you execute an Ethereum block, you really only need to check that it is available. Today we make that check in the dumbest way possible by just downloading it all. So even though you kind of don't need it locally to execute the block, you still have it locally, just because it's the simplest way to actually make that check. The point is that with PIRDAS, so like later in the year with the Fusaka hard fork, we will do the much smarter thing that we move to a sampling-based availability check. But in the meantime, we just looked at the network and we're like, okay, there is a one-time kind of a bit extra that we can squeeze out of the network. And the nice thing is that we also move, as Stefan was saying, we're moving the average, which is the important metric for the throughput. We double that, but we actually only have to increase the maximum, the worst case, basically from 6 blobs to 9 blobs. So it's basically only putting a little bit of extra strain on the network today. So that's like a one-time step in terms of scaling. And then basically everything beyond that, starting with PIRDAS, in Fusaka, we'll basically get higher throughput by actually changing the way we do these availability checks by more efficient sampling techniques. And so what that means is that while we get like a one-time 2x kind of out of Pectra, you can actually expect higher rate of increase starting at Fusaka. So basically the current, we have like an optimistic target for Fusaka that would be an up to 8x increase over the Pectra numbers. It might be that we roll that out initially at a slightly lower level just for stability of the network, but in principle, like that's the kind of improvement you can expect from this sampling mechanism. And then we are already now working on, so basically that is right now in the implementation stage, and then we're already working on the research side on the change for the hard fork after for Amsterdam, where we will have yet another kind of multiplier on top. So you can really expect the blob scaling to basically, I think internally we have like this target of like maybe say 3x every year. That's like a good kind of rough target that might even, we might, I think that was already said before Ethereum kind of started to try to be a bit more aggressive for these things. So it could be that we're now going to aim for something higher than that, but I think that's a good baseline expectation. And then, yeah, I'm not sure, your question was a bit open-ended on scaling. So maybe just like for people who don't quite like this, this difference between data availability and then execution. So maybe just to clarify that, right? So like data availability, that's really, really important for L2s, right? And so that's, of course, how Ethereum is basically choosing to scale to like literally billions of user scale. So there we're basically now on this path to scaling that quite rapidly to allow for these L2s to operate. We are now also starting to work on scaling features for the Ethereum L1 itself. That is separate from data availability. So that is execution scaling. So you might have, for example, also heard about Danko had recently had this proposal EIP 7938, where he was proposing like over the next few years to 100 times increase the throughput of the L1. And so that's the execution scaling. So basically Ethereum now does 2 types of scaling. There's the data scaling for the L2s and the execution scaling for the L1. In Pectra, we'll do the first step of the data scaling, and then starting from Amsterdam, as Fusaka will also still focus on. Fusaka later this year will also still focus on data scaling. So basically, 2025 is the year of data scaling, and then 2026, you can already like mark in your calendars as the year of execution scaling. I think we'll see a lot of features aimed at that side of things next year. And then in the meantime, you already see the gas limit on Ethereum just basically inch up higher in the meantime. And basically that's similar to how basically this one-time change in Pectra that we do from 3 to 6, that's just taking the existing mechanism, pushing it to its limits. That's the same thing with the gas limit, right? Before we ship all these new features for scaling, we just take the gas limit, push it to its limits, and that's already coming later this year.
Well, that's the danger with the open-ended question, but really informative. Thanks for that, Ansgar. Maybe just circling back to 7691 before we quickly touched on 7623. Marcin, do you expect, or Stefano, do you expect any immediate effects on L1 block proposals, blob fees, roll-up transaction fees, the same way that we did in the immediate aftermath of Denkun? Marcin, do you want to maybe touch on that for 30 seconds?
Yes, obviously we've increased the block throughput prices will drop at least for some time. And yes, I think it's natural when there will be more space on the network, like prices will be lower.
Yeah, it makes sense. Anything to add there, Stefano?
Yeah, maybe just adding here that with this API, we are also changing a bit the way fees on blobs are calculated. And so the way it works usually is that you calculate the fees according to the usage, the previous usage of blobs on the previous block. So if the blobs are on the edge cases, if blobs are empty, there will be a drop of fees, which is around 14%, something like that. And if there is full blobs, there would be an increase of fees about 8%. So as you can see, there will be a different an impact on fees also because we are increasing the capacity of blobs. So it would be difficult to hit the full blobs now, and so there will be space for maintaining the fees quite low, and this will of course impact also layer 2 transaction fees.
Yeah, of course. Thanks, Stefano. Okay, so 7623, Ansgar, do you want to give us an overview, and then maybe we might get 1 or 2 questions on it?
Yeah, I think 7623, it's a smaller kind of feature in the Pectra fork. It makes basically it's about the cost for call data, right? So call data is the data you put into a transaction that you actually need during execution. So for example, like some data on like, hey, I want to do this Uniswap trade, whatever, right? Like this kind of data. It historically has also been used by L2s basically for data availability before blobs became a thing, and so we always try to make sure to keep it relatively cheap. It is a bit on the cheap side, and specifically it's on the cheap side just in terms of like we always have to worry about the worst cases. So if you stuff an entire block full of call data, it can become quite large. Today the network can just like barely handle it. Of course, we're not running on like an unsafe value or anything, but like given that we want to have a bit more headroom for the blobs, for all this other networking that we want to do now, we wanted to like make that call data worst case better, especially because in practice no one uses this much data, right? And so this EAP has this nice trade-off. Instead of making call data cheaper, call data more expensive for everyone, right? Which would of course be a bit annoying for normal users that just use it at an appropriate rate. It's a clever mechanism that specifically only makes call data more expensive if you disproportionately use it. So if your transaction basically only consumes call data and does nothing else, you now have to pay a higher rate. But if you consume a healthy mix and you basically go to Uniswap, you do a trade there, right? Like if you're a normal user that's not abusing call data, you pay the same rate as before. So basically it like doesn't change the experience for the average user, but it does make the worst case much better. And so we have more headroom now to basically use it for extra blobs. That's yeah.
Cool. Yeah, like I know that the final output of this EAP seems relatively, it obviously has all these smart features, but I had it took a while to go through some of the videos and the forums regarding this EAP, and there was a lot of trial and error on the final decision to, as far as I understand, to 4x the cost of DA on call data, more or less. maybe Marcin, are you like familiar with some of those decisions that were made? Quickly, like, what was the major ones that were handled, if you were?
Like the most important is to limit the maximal block size. It's like right now we can have like a block with 0 bytes, which has slightly above 7 megabytes, and by introducing this mechanism for increasing fees for data-heavy transactions in 7623. We are limiting this max size to about 2 megabytes. So the worst case will be limited like a lot, and thanks to that, but by avoiding this worst cases, we can take more place for blobs, for future increases in gas limit, etc.
Sweet, yeah, cool. Okay, so I guess the hard fork waits for no one. We have to hand over to Ben, who's going to walk us through hopefully the successful transition into Pectra. So, floor is yours, Ben.
All right, got to unmute. Can you see my screen?
Yeah.
Okay, so this is the Nethermind UI, that one of the tools we'll be using to monitor the hard fork. You can see the blocks coming in at the bottom. Who's proposing the size and the throughput. There's about 230 seconds left till the hard fork. These are the transactions in the block and sort of the composition. We also have beacon chain, which monitors the sort of the number of validators in there, and we can follow the blocks along as they are proposed and finalized. And then we have other tools such as the peer-to-peer congestion network that we can pay attention to, and how much compounding validators and who's started. As you can see, 7 have already migrated to the compounding structure. And then there's Dora, the Explorer, which allows us to sort of monitor more closely what the proposals, what chains they're on. At the moment, you can see it's all on the same chain, which is good. But we will pay attention to that, and we can look at the various transactions coming in, so the consolidations, etc. And then from PandaOps, they have various other tools. So this is from Zatu, I think, network, which validators can install, and it sends information to PandaOps. And you can see it's sort of following the attestations, the blocks, where in the world they're coming from, how quickly it all propagates, and sort of following deeper on that. You can see here's the slot and its progression, sort of what's happening as the blocks get proposed. So we can follow along there as well. And then we have the logs for the actual beacon consensus there, where we'll hope to see the giraffe. Although I'll hand over to Marcos. Can you share your screen? Because we've got about 80 seconds, and we'll see if we can. Okay. So hopefully about 63 seconds now. So
can you see my screen, guys?
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
So hopefully we'll see the at the top is the consensus layer, and below there is the Nethermind logs. And hopefully we'll see a giraffe printed when the fork happens. Still progressing fine. 27 seconds. Yeah, all blocks successfully proposed so far. 10 seconds. 4 seconds. Okay, and that's Pectra. Okay. So if I take over again, let's have a look. My screen.
Ben, I think that it's better now to switch to Dora and see the consolidations and so on, and see how the chain progress.
Okay, so this is Dora. This is the first block. Okay, it looks like we have a successful proposal. All right. Which is good. So we are now on Pectra. And let's see if there's any
You can see actually some first consolidations are trying to be processed 15 seconds ago.
Is the first request in for consolidation?
A block with 5 blobs.
Go back there. Yeah. Back to Dora. So one missed block there. Not sure who from. But we're still progressing the chain. Might be too soon to say complete success, but it's a good sign. And see that Electra has done live. 129 seconds ago. Let's check down.
No forks for now. Everything looks, for now at least, good.
Couple missed blocks. What's participation rate? So you can see the blocks are coming in as part of Pectra. Participation rate.
You cannot guess right now. You need to wait a little bit for the epoch to complete, but seems like it will drop slightly because few more misses are there. 22.8.
Yeah, it's very good. It's still progressing the chain. 40%. Do you want to comment, Kamal, on how you think it's going?
Guess for now, it's progressing well. We just have some missed blocks, but not many of them. Some first consolidations are being tried to be processed, but not yet successful.
Looks
We
like
have
one
like
been
3 missed
done.
blocks from this epoch, which is not great, but not bad. It might be due to not upgraded versions. So for now, it's not bad. We just need to give it some time.
Let's see. We're up to 8 blobs. So we're definitely on the new blob schedule.
Yeah, that's correct. Someone tried to make a consolidation, but a not yet activated validator.
Uh, 68%, is that right? What's
At least
the
at least above 66, right? So that's good.
Kamil, have you checked
73?
all nodes in our infra? We have different client pairs, so it should be a good estimation of how things are
Yeah,
working.
we have five nodes for monitoring with all different CL clients, and every single one is on the same fork right now. Progressing fine. So from this point of view, it's good. Yeah.
Forkman says it's good. This is
Yeah.
like inferior alchemy. Paracelsus. We can see what the where the math box is still being produced. And the builders are doing.
Yeah, Forkman says everyone is on the same fork, so that's good.
Yeah, so we can see Titan still building. That's good.
Which is...
Although if there was a problem, then the nodes would fall back to local building, so that would still be okay. But that all looks good.
So yeah, looking good, but we just need to wait for some more activity on chain with validators consolidating or some EL withdrawals, exits, etc. But yeah, as we saw, there is already one block with more than 6 blobs, so blob schedule applied well. That's for sure.
Yeah, we seem to be up to 8. And reaching the end of that epoch. Tell the correct one? Let me see. That one. Yeah, it's this one. So 88%.
The gas price increased.
Oh, yeah. 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 Good spike up there.
Yeah, interesting. Quite significant spike, to be honest.
So we're up to 24 way. You see on this block here. And here's the following the gas prices. Blocks are quite full. Good, Dora.
That gas price increase is interesting. This epoch is right now on 88%, the transition epoch. So at least for sure we are fine with enough validators being upgraded well to the proper versions. We dropped we need to wait a little bit more because the real value will appear when the epoch will be justified or finalized. It's updates back then to the real value. But seems like the worst case scenario for now is like 10% of the network didn't upgrade it well, which is fine, and probably it is less. We will see the real value in like 10 minutes.
Let's just check the consolidations. Here we have two that are processed. I can't remember what you need to do, but it's not. You need to do a little bit of preparation before doing the consolidation. Is that correct? It's not just I think you need to consolidate your node first, and then you can reconsolidate, consolidate other node. Yeah. So when this becomes full, the previous slot will epoch will be justified. Well justified. Yeah. Okay, should I hand over to the next section and we'll keep monitoring?
Yeah, maybe I can take over here. I mean, fingers crossed, it seems like everything is going okay at the moment. Of course, we can't really know until finalization. But yeah, so for this next segment, I'm going to be speaking with Tomasz sort of on the future of Ethereum, basically after Pectra. So Tomasz, you here? Oh, I think you're on mute.
I am. Hey, everyone.
Hey, great to have you. I'm excited to find out your take on sort of the roadmap for after Ethereum. So just to introduce, so Tomasz is the founder of Nethermind and also as of recently the co-executive director of the Ethereum Foundation. Yeah, and we're going to discuss the future of Ethereum after Pectra. I kind of like to sort of kick off the discussion by just kind of understanding what is your view of the roadmap sort of on a high level for Ethereum after Pectra.
Yeah, we will continue repeating scale blobs, scale Ethereum L1, improve UX. And it's important to have a few goals that clarify which direction we are going. It doesn't mean that you directly convert those three things into EIPs. It's a direction that represents what the ecosystem and community needs. This is what L2s are saying. They ask for scaling blobs for scaling L1, so the L2s can have very clear promise on the entire ecosystem scaling. This is what people building on L1 are asking for. Well, this is what L2s and all the application builders are asking on the UX interop side as well, to feel the liquidity, that the usage of the chains, that the more UX and DevX is all much better. And then if you look at everything else that we're doing, like converting this to EIPs, we'll see this coming in Fusaka. We'll see this coming in Amsterdam, and there is work towards converting those goals, those directions into particular upgrades to the network. It also allows us to be much more clearly like negative towards some ideas of changes the potential upgrades, saying, no, this is not related to our goals. This could delay some critical deliveries. I think maybe this was one of the reasons why we had such a challenging discussion on EOF. And I think this is important to also streamline the timelines of deliveries. Say that forks should be coming every 6 months. That we should have very good clarity on where we're going with each fork. What is the leading change? How it impacts users? How it is going to be seen as a product aspect of Ethereum. Ethereum as a platform. Ethereum as a network. Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah, I think we can definitely touch more on some of the stuff later around like EOF and Fusaka. But from your perspective, like, do you feel there has been this shift where now it does seem that the ecosystem is sort of aligning around these goals? Because in the past, maybe it hasn't been so clear.
Sometimes it's a matter of how we talk about those, how we express them, and whether we confirm that there is nothing missing. It might be that you don't have a massive shift, because when you look at Vitalik's roadmap, it's not that much different. Just you can reorganize those boxes and say, oh, all of them fall under some of those categories, scaling or improving UX. Especially as improving UX can be really understood broadly for security, for privacy components, and so on. Still, like for clarity, when we talk about improve UX at the moment, it's mostly interop and the feel of L2s, L1s together. However, when you extend it, it's also like the finality, it's the DevX experience, and so on. Coming back to your question about is there a shift? So when I say that having clarity on what is not there and saying that very loud, maybe this is a shift. Like previously, we would say, okay, we know this is the roadmap, but based on the research and explorations of the core developers or the community, anything may fall suddenly and be added to the fork. And now I feel we have much more clarity when we would say no. And this is a very slight shift. It makes everyone feel like, okay, now every time I want to initiate something, every time I want to maybe expand the mandate of Ethereum Foundation, or every time I want to think about the grants from EF or other institutions in the ecosystem, I'll look at those directions and say, I should really, really focus on those free deliveries.
Yeah, it does seem helpful, like, especially from the perspective, it's always hard to say no to stuff, right? Or like, but with having these like clear goals in mind that everyone's maybe pushing towards, it can kind of help to like focus us a bit. But yeah, just to kind of, I guess, go back to Pectra for a bit. So sort of with these goals in mind, like what are you most excited about in Pectra? Like what unlocks will we see?
Yeah, sure. I mean, as I say, many of the IPs of the past also fall under those categories. Scaling, sometimes scaling feels very, very direct, like we raise the gas limit. Sometimes through the IPs, we're preparing background for raising the gas limit in the future. I think Pectra is this type of fork that gives us opportunity to improve the capacity of the network further. So I wouldn't be surprised if within a few weeks we start seeing gas limits going up again. We've done a lot of exploration on how much preparation is there from the clients on testing all the edge cases and understanding of how the network changes, how all the effort towards performance improvements of the clients, how it progressed. So coming back, think about MaxEB, the effective balance. So merging validators, this is all designed to support scaling, single slot finality direction, or free slot finality, all the solutions to improvements for staking. Then when we talk about the improving UX, 7702 is a massive change. It's a result of a few years of explorations of how to approach account abstraction topics. Here, Ansgar contributed a lot, and he was posting earlier today about how that journey looked. There's lots of people working on that change and all the tooling. There's also amazing effort from wallet providers, from all the tool operators that decided to support it, and you'll see many people excited about this change. Yeah, I think all the other aspects of Pectra really contributes to those goals. A bit less, maybe it's less of a focus than it will be that what we would expect, maybe in Fusaka and Glamsterdam, because we had a bit of wider approach in the past. But it's a meaningful fork, and I think everyone will be very happy that it got delivered. And it got delivered with some of the. Maybe in the past we would expect that it would come faster, that the prioritization and choosing the EIPs would be much clearer, and that's what we want to address now. I see also Camille posting just now the epoch progression. So far everything looks good, I think, on Pectra.
Okay, nice. Yeah, I mean, yeah, it does feel like what you said. Yeah, with Pectra, it's not so much like maybe one standout feature like was in will probably be in Fusaka, but just kind of a lot of like kind of quite large upgrades, but none that's like really sort of stands out, I guess, just general improvements. But so as well as the technical improvements, I want to cover sort of the governance side of Pectra, because I mean we're in discussions around Pectra for quite a long time. There was the initial scoping, and then it was split into Pectra A, Pectra B, which eventually sort of became Fusaka. But in your opinion, kind of what have we learned from this upgrade, and kind of how can we use it to make things more efficient in future?
I think there are already some fantastic proposals from Team Baiko and community on how to reform the approach to governance, what we'd like to achieve, and how to avoid delays in forks in the future. Mostly a fantastic proposal to have that split between the group of people that select EIPs that should go to the next forks, and then group of people that are really focusing on the delivery of the most soon to be released fork, and testing coverage and just focusing on everything that was already decided. And then beyond that, I think this is not yet fully implemented, but we start talking about it a lot and already reaching out to community. So involving application developers, the DeFi operators, major stakers, all the great builders of our ecosystem, to be very active in thinking about where Ethereum should go, like 1 to 2 years from now. So bringing them to strategy discussions, bringing them to discussions about Ethereum as a platform or product, reaching out to L2s and say, what would you need from Ethereum 2 years from now? Reaching out to DeFi platforms and say, what would you need? What goals, what metrics we should set for ourselves? And then setting that set of goals in front of core developers and researchers and saying, look, this is how Ethereum should look. This is what people need the most. So apart from the obvious security features that you really control and you deliver for the community, this is where community asks for particular features and metrics and goals, how you convert it into particular EIPs, and how you structure the forks to deliver it in the fastest way. Can you parallelize something? Can you do something without forks? Is some of it related to tooling? So should it be also forwarded to like ecosystem development at the foundation and other teams in Ethereum? Maybe you can simply advertise some of those feature requests and say, look, this is needed, but this is beyond what core devs work normally on. So having everyone involved very early in the process of discussing where we're going, which direction we're going, is possibly a bit more of a change. I think that surely this was happening through social media, through forums. So those discussions were always there, but maybe structuring them and showing clear feedback from core developers to app devs to DeFi to L2s, and showing that conversation that is happening and it's very friendly, and that everyone just plans of how to make Ethereum win.
Yeah, I'm definitely hoping we can like learn some of these lessons for future forks. I mean, I think we're already starting to see things change in regards to Fusaka scoping. Like no one kind of wants to make the same mistakes again. Yeah, so for the rest of the conversation, I kind of want to break it into what are your sort of like short, medium, and like long-term visions for the future of Ethereum. So starting with like short term. So what do you think is the most important things like coming up on the horizon?
I think what I'm most excited about is we really see a lot of adoption this year, 2025. So first of all, we see lots of L2s onboarding, thousands or millions of users. We see world onboarding users, we see base onboarding users. Recently, we've seen the Focus Tree and Starknet onboarding users. And depending on the week, it will be one or the other L2, and some of them like jumping ahead in some quarters. So really mentioning whenever we see those successes, look, there are some great RWA success with ZK Sync. When we look at the numbers, we see Arbitrum bringing a lot of value to the chain. We see like Unichain growth. So this is super exciting. And now all of this means that there'll be more demand for the blobs, for L1 to bring that security, to bring all the values and space for minting assets, for operating the highest value transactions, to really feel the demand for what we want to deliver. So if we bring the blocks of 360 million, 300 million gas, if we shorten the block times, we want those blocks not to be just like larger and empty. We think that they'll be really busy, and they will be busy because of all of this adoption coming from the L2s, but also very clear invitation for builders to build on L1 as well. I think that there's this natural way to build on L1 and then send assets for very fast processing of some trades on L2s, or simply build around some niche projects and very customized L2s, while always having that space for L1 to escape for security, to know that you're connected to the most secure, most like privacy, censorship resistant oriented framework in the Ethereum mainnet, and that all the researchers, all the people in the Ethereum ecosystem really care about it and deliver that value. So yeah, I think that's what I'm excited about. Also seeing enterprises really coming to Ethereum. Ethereum now showing massive win on how much of the RWAs or stable coins we bring on board, and we see usage of Ethereum mainnet for that. And we see confirmation, we hear confirmation from the large operators of funds, RWA minters that they simply, well, trust in the trustless Ethereum, that they love the neutrality, they love the confidence in the long-term, like forever future of Ethereum mainnet. And that's what continuously causes also their customers to push them to deploy on Ethereum. So this is all very exciting, and that's when I think that the future of the network should simply respond to that demand. So because sometimes also when you show confidence in scaling, confidence in the future of the network, then also that demand immediately appears even before you scale, because people say, okay, I can start building there, and that's exactly what we show, the invitation to build on Ethereum further, to build even more advanced protocols, to continue composability of everything in DeFi with real-world assets, with stable coins that are coming, to see those constructions with identity solutions, with AI solutions. And then it all comes back now to scaling blobs for L2s, to onboard more users, to onboard more activity, scaling L1, and the best UX, so people don't feel confused with what happens on the wallets or what happens between L2s, so they feel really like it's one ecosystem and they know how the assets flow.
Yeah, seems like definitely a lot of exciting things happening in the short term. Like, does feel like it's quite a critical point maybe in Ethereum's adoption. Yeah, one thing you touched on there is, I think, the induced demand, just the idea that, I mean, we want to scale these blobs but not have them empty, and like if people are going to build on L1, they need to know that it's going to reliably kind of stay cheap and not suddenly spike. But sort of, I guess maybe a specific question in the short term, like, do you expect to see some like gas limit increases in the short term, maybe before Fusaka or after Fusaka?
Very much so. I think that before Fusaka, we'll already see gas limit increases on the network. I mean, like that's my expectation, but in the end, it will be decision of all the execution layer clients, consensus layer clients saying, yeah, green. Well, even the blocks with the increased sizes, they can do that even without the core developers. I think this is that beautiful nature of multiple layers of like showing that green light. First, you have maybe some strategies to researchers saying, yeah, we think it's safe, we checked. Then core developers confirm, maybe even suggest some modifications to the defaults on the clients, and then validators start feeling more and more comfortable to drive that change. In the past, I remember that for TwinStack, we started increasing the gas limits just to express that confidence from Nethermind and TwinStack. Then that was picked up very quickly and led even by other operators. I think Coinbase pushed a lot. And this is really showing the community working together in understanding of where we can push and where we should slow down to feel secure. Security is never pushed at risk, and I think now we're ready to continue scaling.
Yeah, I guess one of the biggest things is just having kind of more consensus around the devs that, yeah, this is something that we need to like prioritize and scale. Okay, I think.
Yeah, I think
maybe
that
we can.
The client devs are hungry for scaling now. They want to show
definitely
all the perf improvements that they've delivered over the last years. And we have here in the call some people that really contributed to that growth and our ability to move the gas limit up.
Yeah. I mean, I guess so. The other thing for the short term is Fusaka. I mean, I guess we've kind of covered pretty much like, you know, L2 blob scaling is massive. Like PIRDAS is going to be the next focus. But I'd also like to get your opinion on sort of EOF and like whether that was the right decision.
I think that team will be publishing something longer soon. I did try to be I tried to stay like quite neutral on EOF because I thought that in this particular area, like the compilers, I didn't have deep knowledge to analyze it in short term as I started looking into EOF much more. I also wanted to make sure that the discussion is very clear, that more and more voices come to the conversation. So we accelerated this. My team accelerated a lot of discussions, and we've seen people coming and expressing voices. I feel like on one side we see that the entire ecosystem is ready to scale to show that we want to win. So there is willingness to make changes. But for EOF, there were lots of voices where they were showing like insecurity, not being sure that this is related to those focus areas. So maybe already that's pointing at those three directions of scaling and improving UX made people feel a bit more encouraged to voice their opinion that EOF was not contributing to it. I hear also lots of voices showing how EOF actually improves lots of things related to formal verifications, to compilers, to transpilation. Question is how important those deliveries are now for application developers, for builders on Ethereum. Many voices were saying, look, it's great that core devs see there is improvement. We believe that there might be significant improvement, but now when we think about this critical period of onboarding users and building applications, it doesn't seem to be something that helps us the most. Again, I also heard voices that there are some aspects of the EOF that are really critical for improving DevX. For example, bytecode size for the contracts deployed was mentioned very often, and a few other aspects of EOF. So it's sure it's very contentious one, the EOF discussion. There's lots of learning about the governance process and how we present it and how quickly we invite those dissenting voices to conversation and how much we try to adjust it. So there's much more to discuss. So like today, it's still not all the conversations that I could have about EOF that happened. They will happen over the next few days, weeks, and then I'd like to see where that discussion on EOF leads to very clear outcomes where if we decide that somehow EOF is no longer the direction at all, then we'll be able to clearly tell everyone on the client teams that say, look, just drop this code base and don't work on it anymore. And if we decide that something related to EOF should happen, then we should invite all the biggest critics to the spec work on EOF and say, look, what of EOF you liked, how you would like to change it, is there something that you would like to build here? I think it's still pending, and it's only my thinking, and there are really many people with very strong opinions on EOF, so please don't take it as a maybe like expected course of action. It's just what will be like some of my work behind the scenes of getting people connected and decide on this.
Yeah. So one. Sorry, Mark. I have a question about this topic in particular because the calls for all core devs have been like changed a little bit. So now we have the ECD or all core dev call where we're doing the scoping, and there is also the research call where we're doing the discussions about the long term of Ethereum, and there is also the testing call where we're talking about the current fork. So like what I want to ask you here is, who do you think is the most suitable audience for each call? Because you're saying, oh, we want the community to engage and we want the community to go into these calls and talk and discuss the direction that Ethereum wants to go. But the community maybe needs some guidance into which calls to join, and like which aspects of the community also or which segments of the community should join which calls. That would be very cool to know.
Sure. I think that for the research call, there were many pieces of feedback from the community saying, look, we would like to know much more in advance of in which direction research is going, what they're exploring, and why. At the same time, give the platform for researchers to be able to share what they're working on without any indication that this is commitment to delivery in the forks. So research is very much like informational about things to happen in a year to 2 years and beyond. I think so far these were well received. Then the all core devs should be over time like the space where core developers with all their experience and an ability to create like the engineering improvements, to design them, where they would convert the strategical directions into actionable items for like 2 forks from now. So I believe this is the place where maybe the large operators, application developers would like to come and verify whether they agree with how this strategic directions got converted into actionable items, into APs. Maybe then they can voice concerns and maybe suggest their own solutions. They will very often actually be able to design better EIPs than core devs here. So I think they should participate in those calls. On the testing call, the one that is focused on the next fork, my imagination would be this is when the tool developers come and express like, oh, look, you're delivering changes in the client in the clients, but we have some delays here. This is what's causing us complexity. This is what we need to test together. Here are the tools that are important for developers. Here are all the aspects of Ethereum ecosystem. Like this are the calls where maybe the teams like Lido, like Uniswap, like all the other DeFi protocols would come and say, or maybe like wallet builders would come and say, we want to test it together. Maybe like some MEV aspects of the chain where like MEV boost or commit boost would be tested. So maybe some L2s would come here and say like, look, we have some questions about how to implement it into our flows. And the strategic discussion, this happens now a bit more between like the EF people inviting various people from the Ethereum ecosystem, but then publishing that through mostly for communication on the podcasts and blog posts from the leadership. Again, still that's that communication might be slightly more decentralized. So you'll see people like Ansgar, Dankrad, Justin, myself suggesting various directions. Vitalik will show some like research and strategy for many years ahead. Maybe we'll show some potential strategical pivots to discuss. And the more we communicate openly, the earlier we invite everyone to be there, to be involved. But those will be unlikely it will be public calls, because the nature of the strategic discussion is really just arising very irregularly from various meetings that are supernaturally like behind the closed doors, like the one-on-one meetings between larger players, sometimes one-on-one meetings with fresh builders that say this is what I'm struggling with. And it's not that we like somehow hide them, but this is like very beginning of the direction. So they are unexpectedly appearing in response to the changes in everything that happens in the world, technology or politics, like regulatory aspects.
Yeah, it does seem like we need to kind of learn from this to like get better to include different voices into the ACB kind of governance process and have like a more kind of streamlined way to do that. Time has kind of flown by, so we don't have too much time to cover the long-term roadmap, but I wonder if you could just kind of finish off with a few words on sort of like the medium to long-term plans of Amsterdam beyond, like, you know, obviously we have the three big items, but is there anything else you're excited or like specific maybe proposals that could help us get there?
Like, I think Ethereum is always seen as long-term because of its values, but nowadays the major ask from community is like in the public space and this discussion of what we really need to do, focus on short-term, focus on the scale blobs, scale Ethereum L1, improve UX, and don't get us all like too much distracted with this long-term discussion. It's there, it's obviously there, and it's related to making sure that Ethereum is always like the strongest, the safest network. But we don't have to at this moment to bring it too much to attention. It happens, and those people who are involved will see that very naturally through the blog posts and conversations.
All right, thank you very much, Tomasz. It's been great finding out about your vision of Ethereum's future. So now I think just for the final segment, Ahmad is just going to sort of wrap everything up. So pass it over to you.
Yeah. So thank you, Tomasz, for giving us much of your precious time. I'd also like to thank all our guests from various teams who have joined the live stream. I'd also like to thank all the core devs for their efforts and for delivering the Pectra upgrade. And as we've seen until now, it has finalized, it has worked, everything's working just fine up until now. I'd like to thank our audience and our viewers. Thank you for taking the time to listen in and to go through this journey with us. And yeah,